Don't treat community like stupid cold sales emails. Too many people do it. That doesn't work.
Amen.
In communities, I think what's really interesting is we tell every member that our network is both a give and a take. And what I'd recommend to people is you have to do both. They're built to add value. Seek out others, get advice, share that job application or that resume with the group. But in order to do that and make the community function, you also have to pay it forward and add your value some way, somehow.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the 1% Podcast. I'm your host, Vin, and
I'm Shane.
And today we're joined by Stan the Man. What's up, brother? Welcome to the show.
Hey, guys. How's it going? Thanks for having me here.
Of course, dude. We're super excited. Me in particular, because I met you, what was it, about two or 3 weeks back, having a little hangout, and I really love what you're up to. I love what you're building, but of course, you could tell the fans that. Please, Stan, tell the audience what you're up to, what you're building, what you're most excited about right now, and let's let you do the honors of telling your own story.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, Vin and Shane, and for everyone listening. My name is Stan, and I'm the founder of the Storm King Network and Storm King Consulting.
Sweet.
So to kind of explain what that all is, I'll kind of take you back to early in my career. So I started my career in consulting. I was over at Deloitte, working way too many hours a week, flying out every Monday morning at 6:30 in the morning from LaGuardia to Nashville, every Thursday getting home at 11 p.m. Realized I didn't want to be a cog in the machine in my consulting career. So what did I do? I became a cog in the machine in my sales career instead. I was over at a company called Wonderkin. Before that, it was called Bounce Exchange, in really the email marketing space. And I went from an account executive to one of the highest performers on the team to one of our two VPs of sales, helping the company grow from $10 million a year to over $100 million a year in annual revenue. And as I wrapped up my time at Wonderkin, two things really stood out to me, maybe three. The first is really enjoy building relationships with people. I'm really an introvert, but that's how I get my energy, building relationships and adding value to others. Number two, I hate selling one thing to one person that may or may not be the right fit. I have friends that are absolutely incredible at that. I realized that was not me and where my skill set is. And last but not least, this massive opportunity that so many companies have today to be more community minded. Everyone is looking to do networking dinners and events, but very often it's a very one piece at a time type of strategy. And from my own sales experience and talking to other marketing leaders I knew, I realized there had to be a better way to really allow these technology companies, think of the Salesforces, the Shopifys, the Klaviyo's of the world, to build deeper relationships with brands that really matter. And on the brand side, how can you learn from your peers without a sales pitch around every corner? There are so many resources out there, but there's very few that when you have that tactical question and you don't want to have 50 account executives following up immediately afterwards about where to turn. So I thought, what if I created a company that really at its heart would be helping these brands with community-based marketing and connecting an incredible network of leaders, particularly in marketing, retail, and e-commerce in the process. So I decided to create Storm King Consulting, and the pinnacle of it is our executive network, which has over 650 marketing leaders in there. It is completely free for them to engage. We limit vendor engagement to just events because we all like to eat at nice restaurants and not pay for them ourselves. And then lastly, and really most important for me, really be a place for that tactical business conversation. And I've noticed there's is really far and few between in the industry that I operate in. And as I've spoken to a lot of friends in other industries, everything from health and fitness to sustainability to finance, a very similar problem exists there too. So it's been a ton of work, a tremendous amount of fun to build, scale, and grow. So really excited to chat more about our mission and definitely what we've learned in the process too.
Would you say that this is essentially a mastermind? And then is this mainly, you mentioned a couple other niches, but it really sounded like it was centric towards marketing. So I guess those two questions first. Is this an actual mastermind? You mentioned it was free too, so I'm wondering where the business aspect is.
Totally.
And then the other niches as well.
Yeah, all great questions, Shane. So is it a mastermind? I would say in the simplest form, yes, the way most people associate them. But what I've learned is all these very seemingly similar communities could be very different in how they're structured. And to your point, a lot in the industry today are very much pay to play, where either the marketer has to pay a pretty exorbitant sum, or if it's free, they are selling sponsorships for every nook and cranny of the community. And we've really tried to design this in a way which makes us unique, that we do not allow any vendors into a Slack channel, which is the main place that our members communicate. So somehow we've convinced over a dozen sponsors to help support our events and our community, but they don't even get access to the group besides the events themselves. And then in terms of the industries we operate in, it's primarily marketing, retail, e-commerce, but we also don't exclude people that are interested in joining that fall out of those disciplines. Because I'm a big believer, you need to have tons of people in your area of expertise that you could dig deep on and build insights, but you also need to cast a wide network. So what's been really cool is we've gotten requests from everyone from B2B marketers to people in financial services and travel to even CFOs that say, I maybe interact with marketing once a month and I want to learn more. Or people doing a career pivot from one industry to another. So we've made this intentional decision that we don't exclude people that maybe fall out of that core bucket of, let's say, being a chief marketing officer or a VP of marketing, because we really think it enhances the community when we bring those different perspectives involved.
I'm curious, in this Slack channel, this exclusive group, right? What do you guys talk about? What do you guys, as far as like the meetings are concerned, right? The ones that you occasionally host monthly, biweekly, weekly, quarterly, whatever it may be. Is it almost like a round table of, okay, what's everybody doing? What are the strategies that you're using? It is a very helpful, I imagine it's very helpful, especially because it's all marketers with different types of backgrounds, providing different types of strategies to improve everyone's craft. That's what my vision is, at least.
Yeah, your vision's spot on. I think so many of the other avenues out there for people to collaborate. Take LinkedIn, for example. It's a giant digital billboard. I love it. I use it. I would not run my company without it, but it's not the place that if you're a business owner, your revenue has been down by 15% week over week, and you want to have a really tactical conversation with other marketers, that's really going to be the forum for you to do so. So what we believe is if you have a very simple question, you're going to go to your immediate friends or colleagues. But when you have maybe that more advanced question or something where you want to get that second or third perspective, you don't always quite know where to turn. So to give you some actual examples, in just this week alone, and we're recording this on a Tuesday, people have used the community for everything from checking about how tariffs are impacting their brand's discounting strategies to if anyone has heard of a new vendor in the creative space to a private equity partner reaching out about a jewelry and sizing issue that a brand is facing. So we've really tried to brand this again for that more tactical conversation without the fluff, and take things like webinars, for example, very passive in nature. People just typically listen in. What we want to do is really create conversation. So what we host typically about 3 times a month are virtual roundtables where we bring our community together. We pick a topic. We survey our members on what people want to talk about. And let's bring 15 to 20 members together to go in the weeds on that topic. So we've hosted them on everything from AI to social impact to SMS to loyalty. And again, providing that forum that you're not maybe going to get from your friends or immediate colleagues to help provide that support.
I mean, I love it. You're essentially staying on top of your craft as a marketer with other amazing marketers. I mean, it's actually brilliant too. I imagine, so we get a lot of people on this show from anywhere from 8 to 9 figures in e-com revenue, which may be actually good referrals for you too.
Yeah.
But where I'm leading this towards is what we've noticed as far as like when we say what's the top performers lately in marketing, because it's constantly evolving and changing, right? You talk about LinkedIn, talk about an evolving LinkedIn strategy over the past 10 years, right? As a background in marketing, and thank God I switched to virtual assistance employment, that's what I do now. But it's evolving strategy. You have to constantly learn something new. And just because it's working with this campaign with the exact same client doesn't mean that it's going to work for this one over here. So you constantly have to stay on top of your craft, which is where your community comes into place. Now, my question is, from the people that we've talked to, we found out that content, especially in this day and age, where people are building a know, like, and trust factor, and they're promoting something, let's say on TikTok, TikTok Live, Instagram, that's usually the best seller for e-com sites, right? Is to either do it themselves or do affiliate marketing who've already built that know, like, and trust factor. Based on your experience, what are you seeing as far as the best tips and tricks for selling a product sale?
Yeah, it's a great point, especially with content. And even to something you said, Shane, about LinkedIn changing a lot in 10 years. So LinkedIn's changed a lot in 10 months or 10 weeks or 10 days. And we could have a whole separate podcast about, both paid LinkedIn ads, but also how brands are presenting themselves. To go back to content, the brands, at least I've identified in the network that are more successful, I think really take a dual approach to content. One side is investing in really thoughtful, personalized pieces. This may or may not be high budget, which I think is a common misnomer that people say, oh, I have to do this expensive photo shoot and video shoot. Some brands do, some don't, mixed with what I'm either calling AI or UGC powered content. Because I think right now, so much brands are trying to focus too much on one bucket or the other. But in my mind, you really need to take both as a strategy. You're going to have one thing that covers your 80%, something else for the remaining 20%. So that's one piece with content. I also think that the brands are winning, and this relates to it, are rapidly testing and iterating. And the feedback cycle to test everything from a Google ad to a customer service chat strategy, for so many companies, that feedback loop is too long. There's internal bureaucracy, there's politics, there's not clear reporting, misaligned incentives. The brands that are doing really well are ones that can test these things at a high rate, at a high frequency, and quickly fail forward. There's no magic pill, no vendor that's going to work better than others. But at least my perspective is the speed at which you can iterate, whether you're a tech company, whether you're a marketer or anything, is actually one of the biggest determinants of who is going to be successful in this environment where so much changes. And also, consumers have shorter attention spans than ever before too.
Really? I
got to ask, because I think first up, if you don't have a community, and I say this a lot, if you don't have the community within the next 10 to 20 years, you're probably not going to have a business. I think that's bar none. One of the biggest issues I've seen with communities is keeping engagement alive. Do you guys have, I recently joined the community. I'll be transparent. I have not been able to be in there as much as I'd like to, but I see notifications pretty often. Do you feel that your community is highly engaged? How do you start building that? Like, what are some of the secrets to creating that engagement, right? Because at first I know it's usually a lift up front from the creator, but the goal is always to make the community self-sustaining. The goal is to make it that the community is talking and they're asking the questions, etc. How do you get that happening? How do you create that snowball effect?
Yeah, absolutely. You bring up a couple of great points, Vinny, and what we've seen for getting a community started. I would say one of the first and foremost ones that I've seen is who you start your community with. So we were very deliberate. We did not run LinkedIn ads or Facebook ads and say, hey, we're starting this community, join. We have grown our member base almost exclusively through referrals. That's how even you heard about our community in the first place, from someone you know. That person heard from someone. So while we have a very bare bones website, we don't promote it, we don't run LinkedIn ads, we've grown our community from referrals of existing members. And why I bring that up is because who is in your community to start and who stays in your community is one of the biggest determinants of how active it is. So I initially thought we were going to have to come up with daily posts and prompts and polls and questions. And don't get me wrong, that helps definitely drive some engagement. But for us, when you have really great people that want to lean in and add value, they kind of do that work for you. So we were very deliberate on who our first community members were and what our growth strategy would be to engage it further. I think the second thing that we've seen is really important for driving activity is making it a safe space. So a few things that we've done. One, we do not allow any tech vendors whatsoever into our network. And that was really tough because there's a lot of people who maybe were a former marketer and now they're at a tech vendor and have actually had to kick out members of the network that weren't clear with what their intentions were. We also had a scenario a few weeks ago where a tech vendor found out about what was being talked about in the network and used that information in what we at least believe was not the most appropriate way that they should have. So we were actually very adamant and told our members that we noticed this was happening. We reached out to the CEO of that company, was incredibly respectful and did the right thing. But if you don't put the guardrails and safety around your community, people are not going to be comfortable to share. And the topics that get shared in our network are things that in many cases are very private to these companies, not necessarily confidential, but things that maybe they don't want to share with the world or they don't want a vendor to get sight of. So for us, it was really important to make this community that safe space, and why this is not also, to just use an example, the Storm King community presented by Salesforce. This is the Storm King network. None of our vendors, none of our sponsors get access. And the bet is if we do that well, we put the right guardrails around this network, it will benefit some of the sponsors and partners that we work with in an indirect type of way.
I absolutely love that. And so at this point, now that you've got all of this engagement, do you notice that you still get a good bit of people you have to invite? Or do you find that as this engagement grows in your community organically and naturally, that you're getting more people asking to be a part of the community? Like, do you have people tracking you down now being like, Stan, how do I get into the Storm King network? Or is it still a good mix of both where you're promoting it actively and telling people about it? Or have you noticed there's a transition point?
Yeah, it's a great point, Vin. So for actually a little bit of context, in between my time in the email marketing space at Wonderkind and starting this, I worked at one other company. And then after that role, I was there for a little bit under a year. I was trying to figure out what to do. And I actually started Storm King as kind of a side hustle as I was consulting. The moment that I knew that this is bigger than just a side hustle and is not only a business for me, but something that adds value to my community is when I started to get multiple referrals a week, unprompted from existing members, both to potential sponsors, as well as other net new members of the network. So what's really exciting for us, and we kind of even tell members when they join, the way to so-called tip us is to pay it forward and invite other members to the community. We get somewhere between 5 and 15 emails every single week unprompted from either people who want to join or members, which to me is the ultimate validation, that says, hey, I spoke to an industry friend and I thought the Storm King network would be a really great resource for them. So we do a very little bit of outreach. More so the way it happens is if we're hosting an event or we go to an event, we meet someone there, we tell them about the network, they join. But we are not doing email blasts at scale. We are not doing LinkedIn posts to get people to join the network. But if you can very much product-led growth strategies, our product is our member base. They get value. You curate an experience for them. They're going to do that work for you. And it creates this really exciting compounding effect.
How do you make this still personal with so many members? How am I still going to get a personal touch if, 600 plus members and I just join, right? And in a good way, right? But I also feel overwhelmed. Yeah. You feel like that's the big thing for people who have been in masterminds that have big communities, like let's use Jeremy Miner, Dan Law, Tony Robbins. You're just a little tiny person in a sea full of other very successful people, which can be looked at both positively and negatively. Mm-hmm. So how are you making this personal that I, don't feel left out or excluded outside of just the knowledge base of learning from, other successful companies?
It's a great call out, Shane. And an insight that we've heard a lot is this network or these communities can be kind of overwhelming where you don't always know where to turn. Right. So a couple of interesting insights that we've had. Number one is we've actually started to onboard members in groups. So we're hosting typically 2 to 3 times a week group onboarding calls. So let's say someone listening to this podcast is interested in participating in our network. They would join a group onboarding call that is led by myself or one of my incredible colleagues. And the benefit of that is you actually get to meet other people that are joining the network at the exact same time as you. So you have those faces to bounce off of. Number two is we do not allow one person in our community without having an introduction call from myself or our head of community, because we want to make sure that we understand not only what you can contribute to the network, but more importantly, where the network can help you. And an insight that we had is that if we're able to make 2 or more introductions for a new member in their first 2 weeks of participating, they are 4 times more likely to stay engaged with our network after them joining for 3 months. So much of this is if we can drive value immediately for you, you're going to engage more and you're going to want to lean in to attending our virtual or in-person events, participating in our Slack forum or discussion. And then lastly, availability of myself and our head of community. So I tell all of our members that our goal is to act as a bit of a concierge meets matchmaker. So if you're really busy and you have a question about a tech vendor, you have a question because you're hiring for a role on your team, or you just completed your resume and you want to get it in front of recruiters, reach out to us and we will help connect you with other members in the network if you don't quite know where to turn. And that is great because I joke around, we have some members that are in our Slack every day who are responding to every post that's relevant. We have some that want to be part of this network, but I joke around, they are 5-minute Friday members. They look at it maybe from 4:45 to 4:50 on a Friday before they're logging off. For those people, how do they still get value out of the community? And we make them available and connect to our member base. So that's what we're doing today. What we're planning to do in the next few months is more formally roll out what we're calling cohorts. So this is more individual channels, and it's not unique to mastermind groups by any means, for you to have a more in-depth industry discussion. So we'll definitely have ones about topics like email or loyalty or paid acquisition, but there's actually been a couple interesting ones that people have wanted, like job search. Everyone in our network who's looking for a job. Fractional has been a really common one. I joke around, fractional is the word of the year in 2024 for the marketing industry. Everyone's either doing a side hustle, a job, is quitting to do something else. What resources are available for them? How can they talk about what rates they charge, accounting software, who to partner with on deals, what low-cost legal support have they found? All those different things that a lot of the brands and vendors often neglect. So that's what we're doing today to kind of solve that issue. And then also some of the exciting plans we have in the future to address that too.
We had somebody on here a few weeks ago that ran a very successful mastermind and is still doing it. And this has actually become his primary financials for the last 10 years. And he said something that was very interesting that may be beneficial to you as well. May not, because I love the ideas of, where this is and where it's heading. And you have your daily people, that are contributing to the Slack, and you have your 5-minute Fridays. But how he does it is because his group is very big as well. He'll actually put groups of 20s together, and from high to low to medium, to actually get the engagement. Because when you've been there for 10 years, you turn more into those 5-minute Fridays, and you turn into more of, what value can I get? What can I get from these people? So those 20 people that he is, then he'll recycle those 20 people into another group, and he keeps repeating this. So now he's putting those 5-minute Fridays into 20 people, 20 people, 20 people. And he'll meet with that group and be the face of it and oversee it, make it more personalized. But I think that's a great way to keep these higher end people, these people who have been there for years and years, more engaged. We're taking that kind of strategy with our mastermind that we're building. And I just thought, what is your thoughts with that, with around 600 people to do something like that?
Yeah, I think it's a absolutely great idea, because it sounds like what they're trying to do is how do you, many ways, leverage the really not strong performers, but people who are more engaged, who arguably are more valuable to the community,
Right.
and kind of help them pass this along to others that are a little bit less so. I think that's an incredible idea. And I've learned also what you really need for someone who's less involved in the community is what's that one aha moment or tipping point. So sometimes something we'll do is like, we know someone maybe is looking for a job. We talk to a recruiter. Can we make that introduction unprompted for them? We know they're going to say yes. Once we get that kind of one moment or one thing, it really stands out. Right. So to your point, Shane, just riffing out loud, I love the idea of saying, okay, so maybe our more involved members, great. Could we get you to actually, each of you reach out to 5 of our newer members and offer to even just get on a 30-minute call, share your insights. Those people are not going to say no. These are our top members. They love to network. And then maybe there's ways like getting them that, first access to the dinners that we're hosting, or other ways that we could pay them back in exchange for being so, not only loyal, but really open with their time to support the broader network.
I've always liked the idea. I mean, I have a lot of ideas about forming my own masterminds and communities. And one thing that I think is very important is a concept of giving back, whether it's having some form of charity or part of like the membership dues are to a charitable cause. But I think a better way that everybody could really get involved, to your point, is having like a mentorship component, where maybe you have some people that have gotten a lot out of the group start pairing with the newer members and creating like, I mean, if you think about it, they do it in colleges, right? Like as soon as you join a frat or sorority, you get a little, and that little, even though I was never in a frat, I understand it. It's like you kind of take these people under your wing, and we do that in first responders. Like when I was a firefighter, I was a probie. And a lot of the guys were really great showing me the ropes, bringing me into the house, teaching me culture, tradition, best practices, like telling me, hey, don't do that. The guys will hate you. Hey, do this. The guys will love you. And I think when you have community, the scariest and hardest thing is getting people to get involved in it. Like me, I joined and I saw you have this channel of like 100 and something people. I'm like, well, it's not 800, it's a few hundred, right? And I'm like, what do I even say? Or does it get lost and things like that? So I love what you're doing. And I guess I'm curious, to your point, if you have really thought about like, what are some of the best recommendations for people that are listening, if they're trying to network, if they're trying to get into more communities? What's some of the ways to get over those icebreakers? What's some of the ways to overcome the scariness of coming into this group that you may or may not have accept you? Like, what have you found to be some of the absolute best practices that people could start doing themselves right now?
Absolutely. So I think, Vin, you bring up some really great points about communities. And even within the Storm King network, I get it. You join this network for the first time. It can be overwhelming or even a little bit scary, depending on kind of what your views are of network and community building. And I acknowledge that's actually an area we want to get better in. We're trying to think about how do we build out more onboarding materials, more collateral, maybe even more videos from our top members talking about how they've navigated it to support. So a couple pieces of advice that I would have is, number one, recognize that why people are joining communities. They're all joining it because they crave something very similar to you. So try to seek out an opportunity where maybe it's not a one-on-one discussion, but you have the ability to meet other members in a small group format. So if it's the example that Shane gave before of how a mastermind group might set up sessions for new members with folks that are more experienced in the group. In the case of Storm King, if it's one of our roundtables, that's a really great way to get involved. Number two, I always tell people, is identify commonalities. In our network, we've made the decision that we do not hide our member list. We give it to any potential sponsor, any member. So look at the member list, and we can even help with this. Try to identify not 600 people you want to meet, maybe who are 5 people that you have a shared experience with, and then who are 5 people that you want to meet. Come up with some way to make it less overwhelming for you. So in our community, at the time of this recording, there is a member who is looking for help for a baby formula brand. And there's actually another member who used to be the head of marketing for a large infant formula company. That's a great way to build an initial bond. Those 2 people have never worked with each other, to my knowledge, but I guarantee you they could have a 30-minute call and share a lot of those industry stories with each other in return. And then lastly, I'm a big advocate of always trying to seek out new people. And I've realized in my sales career, I tell people this, I think I am an average seller at best, but what allowed me to do well for myself has been how I've harnessed referrals and powers of other networks. So let's say you really have a goal where you want to, get that interview or work at Nike, just picking out a brand at random, see who in your network can help. And one, don't be afraid to ask, but figure out how you can add value to them first. If maybe that person used to work at Nike and you see on their LinkedIn that they're a big podcast fan, say, hey, based on your experience, it's great to meet you. Here's a couple of podcasts I was listening to that might add value for you. Would you be open to setting up a few minutes? Would love to chat through them with you and get your thoughts on something else that I'm thinking about. But it's scary. It's overwhelming. But remember, at the end of the day, people are people, and you got to take that leap or you got to make that ask. But if you add value to someone first, expecting nothing in return, that's what the best networkers I know do. You're going to prime them and they're going to be a lot more willing to help support you. And that's true whether you're part of Masterminds, the Storm King Network, or you're just utilizing LinkedIn better to connect with peers.
I think people are not understanding the real value of community as an entrepreneur and a business owner here. It's really, when you're an entrepreneur, especially, you've been doing this for over a decade here, it's a lonely job. Right? Especially if you're like me, when you're at the house, you don't really travel anywhere. You're stuck in here for, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week. A community is being around like-minded individuals right there. I mean, if you wanted to stay on top of your craft, that's what a community is for, especially when it's right in your wheelhouse, the same niche, the same demographics. This is really what it's there for, is you're not alone anymore. You have people that you can call on. Can you benefit from it? Can you maybe get more clients from it? Can you get some helpful tips? All that's yes. Those are icing on the cake. But you're there with like-minded individuals who are doing the same thing. And I think that's the biggest value of a community.
I couldn't agree more with you. And it's even in our network. We actually now have members in 45 states. And there are members in states like, we'll get 5 more. If anyone out there is in the other 5.
Alaska?
I don't think we have Alaska yet.
Yeah,
so we've got to target them. But what's, I think, interesting to me is when I've asked people why they've joined the network, I've had stories of a marketer that's based in Montana. They moved for family reasons or a job. They don't really have a vibrant marketing community in where they are.
Yep.
It's not very easy, but if you're in, my joke is if you live in New York, San Francisco, or LA, you could have a free meal every single night of the week by going to one of these other dinners and events. And I think the other big challenge is going to a dinner or going to a conference helps build maybe your network, but that's not the same as being part of a community. I mean, being part of a community is a resource that you can come back to every week, every month, every quarter, every day for support. It's not 3 or 4 people you meet. And it is amazing to me how many companies out there, brands, mistake those two for each other. And then on the flip side, I think a lot of people have said, hey, I've gone to so many events or dinners or conferences, but I'm kind of burned out by the sameness. I want to meet people. I want to have connections. I want to be vulnerable and disclose where I'm having my issues, my failures. So when you really think about it in that perspective, I think that helps make these communities kind of really unique and lasting and add value for who is in it.
So Stan, you told us some of the do's of networking. I'm curious, what are some of the terrible things you've seen? What are some of the most ridiculous or craziest things that have come into your community or any other community that you saw and you're like, oh God, please don't ever do this crap ever again? And can you warn some of our listeners and people out there on, you gave them best practices, but now tell us the worst practices.
Yeah, the worst practices. So I think the couple of things I would say on this one. So to me, community is something that is highly personalized and relevant to each person. To me, at least, community is not a scaled cold email, for example. I know people who have tried to network in different industries who they've sent out 1,000 emails and subscribed to one of these services like Apollo or Outreach, where their form of personalization is adding a name or a company. And very often those emails seem impersonal and go wrong. And that could be in the context of trying to land an interview. That could be trying to sell someone as a tech vendor on a product or platform. So a don't to me is, I truly believe there are no shortcuts to building community and no shortcuts to investing your time in community. There are shortcuts that can help you identify how to best leverage a community, but you have to take the time to seek out other people. And I personally, at least, don't believe that it's something that can be scaled to a tremendous degree with AI or some of the other technology that's out there beyond the LinkedIns of the world. So that's one don't for me. Don't treat community like stupid cold sales emails. Too many people do it. That doesn't work.
Amen.
Also, in communities, I think what's really interesting is we tell every member that our network is both a give and a take. And what I'd recommend to people is you have to do both. I don't think enough people realize that they should take from these networks as well. They're built to add value, seek out others, get advice, share that job application or that resume with the group. But in order to do that and make the community function, you also have to pay it forward and add your value some way, somehow. So I would say another don't is don't just take from a community completely without giving. And my controversial take would be don't only give to a community without taking from it in return. Both pieces need to happen, in my mind, for it to truly flourish and function. So those are the two. And then I think the third thing is realizing also how busy people are. At the end of the day, many of us are working, back-to-back meetings all day, every day. We have commitments with family or friends at night and the weekends. I think a lot of people are like, I sent one email to someone and that's it. The really great networkers I know and the really good people in community think of how do you nurture that relationship? Maybe you send that email, it goes nowhere. Maybe 3 days later, you remember that they were talking a lot about Shopify and you can send them an article about Shopify. Or 3 days later, it's a podcast, or next week you get invited to an event and you can invite them. Some of the best relationships that I've built in my career have taken years to nurture, not because they weren't interested, but because sometimes community and life don't quite intersect the way that we want it to. So kind of the other don't is don't get discouraged or disgruntled if that person that you're really hoping to build a relationship with doesn't respond to you right away.
I love it, man. I think you gave a lot of really great insights on both the do and the don't side, which I think that's massively important. A lot of times people always tell you what to do. If you give someone a list of what to do without also outlining what not to do, still enhances the chance of failure. So thanks so much for providing all of this value. Realistically, I can tell you, and to all you guys listening, Stan knows his stuff here. If you want to become a phenomenal communal person, follow his do's and don'ts. Now, Stan, as much wisdom as you've shared with us, I got a few final questions for you coming up on the end of the show. So we started this podcast with the idea of 1%, meaning not that you have to be a billionaire, rather showing up a very specific way in life. And it could mean anything. You could be a 1%er at anything, push-ups, cake making, fatherhood, whatever it is. So we're curious, what is your version or your iteration of a 1% life?
It's a great question. Something I've reflected a lot on in between different roles I've had. To me, a 1% life is about intentionality in one word. So something I've realized is even early on, I would be working with clients or partners or taking on work or bringing on ideas to Storm King simply because someone else wanted to do those. And don't get me wrong, I'm a big advocate. Sometimes you do have to just listen and be a sponge and provide input to others. But what I realized is I would get often caught up in that kind of filling up every meeting, every time slot, have to work every day to the optimal value. To me now, living a 1% life is intentionality, making very deliberate decisions on why I am or not doing things. This could be a way to motivate. This could be a way to set boundaries and safeguards. This could be literally what happened yesterday, stopping my workday at a certain time when I knew I had more work to go play pickleball with my wife. These types of things where you're very deliberate about what you're doing, why you're doing it, and doing it because you ultimately want to do it, not because other people are asking you to do it all the time, is something that I really believe the 1% life has kind of embodied in me. Is yes, there's things I want to get better at. Like if I could get better at my pickleball swing, I'd love to be in the top 1%. I know that's not going to happen. But for me, it's about how do I just be very intentional with the life I set, the relationships I keep, the business I run, the clients I work with, all the different components. And I see when I do that, I'm at my happiest and I feel most satisfied with everything that I do.
I love that, man. And let me ask you, I have a feeling I know where you might be going with this next question I'm going to ask you, but I'd like to just have your answer. What is one of the best pieces of advice that you've ever received? Could be from a mentor, a friend, family, your wife, doesn't matter. We just want to know a really great chewable piece of information that someone could listen to and maybe even apply to their own life.
Yeah. So something actually my dad's told me a lot when I was growing up has really stuck with me. And it's very simple in nature. Work hard, play hard. And that doesn't mean party hard or anything like that. But while it's very simple to me, work hard is put in your all when you have your work relationships, you're in your meetings, you're building your career. But I think play hard is also incredibly important. The way I always meant it is, you have to take time to appreciate and do the things that matter to you, whether that is to play pickleball on a Monday night, whether that is to watch that dedicated show with your significant other, whether it's to explore museums on the weekend or, once a month, ending your workday early to go see a show or hang out with friends. I think to me, that's something that I keep going back to because running a community, there's always 10,000 more things that you can do. But if I'm not, to go back to my other answer, intentional about playing hard and really, getting value out of those relationships, you're just going to burn out. I've been burned out earlier in my sales career, and I've realized that you have to figure out the optimal balance for you. And every person is going to kind of have a different balance. But to me, I just remember when my dad would always say, work hard, play hard. It one, push me and motivate me to give it my all with my work. And then the play hard piece, when I am at that concert or that sporting event or with friends, not regretting, why am I not sending that email right now? And don't get me wrong, I overthink work a lot. It's something I'm personally trying to get better at, but that's to me a piece of advice in what it means.
I love it. And I could help you with that. But aside from that,
absolutely, Ben.
I got you. We got to have a follow-up call, man. We'll set it up.
We're
after
gonna definitely
this.
do it. Love it.
Can't wait. So last question we got for you, and I'm sure anyone who's listened to this episode, you would be dumb to not have this question that Stan's about to answer. How can people get in touch? How could they become a part of the community? How can they stay up to date on what you're doing and get more involved? Please tell the community what to do and how to do it. And of course, if you have any really cool things up and coming, shout it out here. Let people know.
Absolutely. So a few things I'll call out. First of all, we're always looking for more people to join our network. So anyone who's listening who wants to participate, let me know. You can find me on LinkedIn under Stan Rosenberg, or if you type in Storm King Consulting, our bare bones website will come up there. The other thing that I will say is I've been really fascinated by thinking about how we can create a totally free, call it mastermind of communities. So communities of community leaders. And I've actually met nearly a dozen of those so far. So if anyone out there listening runs another community that might have nothing to do with marketing, maybe it's related to finance, wellness, fitness, sports, chess, whatever it might be, I would also love to connect with you. Still very early, not sure exactly how it's going to look, but I just think it would be great once every other month to bring those people together so we could all learn together about how to really build and grow communities. And lastly, I offer this to anyone I meet. My connections are your connections. So if you're listening, I encourage you to take a lot of the advice that I shared here. Feel free to look through my LinkedIn. If you're looking to be connected with a particular brand, reach out to me. I might not answer that first time. Keep the persistence, but I'm more than happy to help and see where I can add value to you.
I love it, Stan. Thanks so much, man, for being a part of today's episode, for sharing such amazing insights on community and how to get people involved so that they could benefit and grow their business from realistically what is the power of relationships. I've learned early on in life, I shouldn't say early on, I'm a liar. I learned a few years ago from a mentor of mine that relationships are rocket ships and they'll take you everywhere you want to go. So I'm a big fan of building relationships. I advocate for it highly. I advocate for what you're doing. Everybody who's listening, please go check out what Stan's doing. You'd be absolutely foolish if you are a business owner or an entrepreneur of any kind and you're not jumping on Stan's offer to join his community. So I'm going to push everybody I can towards you guys. And we'll see how we can collaborate in our own ways. Stan, stick around for about a minute or two after the show. We got a few things to debrief you on. And again, thank you for your time. For all you listeners out there, thanks again for sticking up with us for another episode of the 1% Podcast. Please like, share, follow, subscribe, comment. Let us know what you're thinking. Let us know if you like what Stan said or not. We like a little controversy. And we look forward to seeing you again. As always, I'm your host, Vin. And
I'm Shane. Make sure you like, share, comment, and follow.
I just said that, man.
I didn't say that one too.
Never say that.
All right. Fine. All right. See you, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye there.